Ukraine is not just fighting a war, it's surviving inside the most drone-infested battlefield the modern world has ever seen. A sky so deadly that jets, missiles, and even infantry take second place to one question. Can a 50-year-old German cannon keep the night from swallowing an entire nation? When Germany sent the Gepard in 2022, critics laughed. Too old, too slow, too useless. They couldn't have been more wrong, because today, that obsolete machine is the most feared drone killer in the war. The weapon Russian operators hate, the shield Ukrainian crews refuse to turn off, and the last barrier between millions of civilians and the chaos Russia rains down every night. This isn't a retired tank. It's a German-built executioner that drags drones out of the sky and leaves them burning. A forgotten relic that became a decisive weapon, and Russia's nightly nightmare. And to understand how the Gepard carved its name into this war, you have to strip the battlefield down to its bones, from the swarms of Russian drones hunting Ukrainian cities to the old German beast that rose from storage and became their relentless, merciless destroyer. Russia didn't expect drones to become its most effective weapon, but when its missiles grew scarce, its aircraft were pushed back, and its offensive stalled, the Kremlin found a new backbone for its terror campaign. Iranian-made Shahed drones, cheap, loud, disposable, and launched by the thousands. They were never meant to change the war, yet today, they shape it. Russia has fired over 44,000 drones at Ukraine, an industrial-scale bombardment designed not to win battles, but to break a nation's will. Power stations, transformers, grain terminals, hospitals, apartment blocks, everything that keeps a country alive is now a target. The strategy is brutally simple. Overwhelm Ukrainian defenses with quantity, not sophistication. Each Shahed costs Russia around $20,000 to $30,000. Shooting one down with a Western missile can cost $100,000 to $500,000. That imbalance is not a flaw, it's the point. Russia is bleeding Ukraine's air defense inventory dry while spending pocket change. And the terrifying part? It works. Ukraine can't afford to fire $1 million Patriot missile every night. It can't track every low-flying drone with radar-based systems designed for ballistic threats. It can't keep burning through its most advanced interceptors faster than the West can replace them. The old logic of air defense, accuracy over volume, quality over quantity, doesn't survive a swarm. The modern battlefield has shifted. Precision is no longer king, mass is. Drones aren't aircraft, they're ammunition. They come in waves, they return in waves, and they only need one gap, one blind spot, one empty launcher to get through. And it is exactly at this breaking point, when missiles were too expensive, anti-air guns too slow, and drone swarms too dense, that an old German relic suddenly became the most important machine in Ukraine's sky. And that's where the Gepard enters, not as a museum piece, but as the perfect answer to a threat it was never built to fight. And this is where an outdated relic suddenly becomes a frontline necessity. For most of its life, the Gepard wasn't a hero. It wasn't even relevant. Born in the Cold War, it was designed for one job: protect NATO armor columns from Soviet helicopters and low-flying jets. Its twin 35mm autocannons were terrifying, its radar suite advanced for its era, and its mobility unmatched. In the 1980s, this thing was a monster, but monsters age. By the 2000s, Germany believed the Gepard had no place in modern warfare. Jets were too fast, missiles were too precise, and drones were barely a footnote in military planning. So Berlin retired it, packed it away, and moved on to sleeker, missile-focused systems. For years, the Gepard was considered outdated, an impressive machine of the past, but ultimately a museum-bound relic. That's why the announcement in 2022 stunned so many analysts. Out of all weapons Germany could send to Ukraine, why resurrect this dinosaur? Because for the first time in decades, the battlefield had shifted back to threats the Gepard was uniquely designed to destroy. Ukraine didn't need million-dollar interceptors, it needed volume. It needed constant fire. It needed something that could see small, slow-moving objects, track them in real time, and tear them apart with a hail of cheap, accurate 35mm rounds. And when Germany's engineers dusted off the Gepard's radar suite, they noticed something remarkable. The old system was perfect for detecting drones, so within weeks, Gepards were pulled from storage, refurbished, repainted, and shipped east. Ukrainian crews were rushed through training, learning to operate a vehicle older than some of the soldiers fighting beside it. Nobody knew then that these outdated giants were about to decide the fate of Ukraine's knights. If you're enjoying this deep dive, please like the video and consider subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us bring more global insights. Now, back to the video. Once the first Shahed fell, everything changed. The Gepard didn't win on reputation, it won on math. Its twin 35mm cannons fire a storm of rounds at speed, and that barrage turned out to be the exact currency the drone war required. Ukrainian crews learned quickly. A single Shahed could be shredded with as few as 7 to 11 rounds, and more typically 20 to 30 rounds. At roughly $600 per 35mm round, that's an economic truth that breaks down cleanly on paper. 7 times $600 equals $4,200. 30 times $600 equals $18,000. Compare that to a single medium-range interceptor costing hundreds of thousands, or a Patriot shot that runs into the millions, and the calculation becomes stark. Intercepting a $100,000 Shahed for $4,200 to $18,000 is not clever budgeting, it's survival strategy. The Gepard turned defense from a financial suicide mission into a sustainable operation. The numbers aren't abstract. Ukrainian crews marked kills in real time. One unit logged 8 downed drones in 6 weeks. Gunner Shahed, whose tally reads like a ledger of survival, reported 4 cruise missiles and 28 Shaheds on his cruise board. Near Odessa, a single Gepard reportedly shredded 10 Iranian-made drones in one night. Each engagement a proof of concept. Volume meets accuracy, and the sky stops burning. Then there are the headline moments that puncture doubt. Videos and verified after-action reports show Gepards intercepting not just Shaheds, but higher-value threats, including a KH-101 cruise missile headed for a power plant. Against expectations, the gun-based system could, at the edge of its envelope, negate the very missiles other countries had deemed necessary. Those engagements changed behavior. Russian planners, forced to account for a cheap, efficient counter, had to rethink mass drone waves and the calculus of expendability. For Ukraine, the Gepard's kill ratio didn't just save munitions, it bought time, space, and the ability to protect what mattered most. With drones being cut down in the sky, the next battle moved to the ground, to the power plants and substations the Gepards were protecting. But shooting drones is only half the story. The real impact is what the Gepard protects. Ukraine's power grid is the country's heartbeat. If it collapses, everything collapses. Hospitals, water systems, communications, factories, even basic heating during winter. And that's exactly why Russia targets it relentlessly. Every Shahed that slips through isn't just a hole in the sky, it's a blackout waiting to happen. This is where the Gepard stops being a weapon and becomes a shield. Unlike missile batteries that are fixed or slow to reposition, the Gepard moves with purpose. It can drive straight to a transformer station, park beside a high-voltage substation, or guard a thermal power plant that can't afford even a single hit. When Russia launches its characteristic night swarms, Gepards don't wait. They maneuver, reposition, and set up wherever the threat is thickest. That mobility is the difference between a city with electricity and one frozen in darkness. And winter is the true battleground. As temperatures drop, Ukraine's energy demand spikes. A single destroyed substation in January can cut power to tens of thousands for hours. But with Gepards stationed near key nodes, the grid stays alive. Operators often say the same thing. If the Gepard is there, the lights stay on. Then came the moment that proved their value beyond debate. The 2025 mega strike, Russia's largest air attack of the entire war. A wave of missiles, drones, and glide bombs, 705 munitions launched in one night. It should have broken the grid. It should have plunged cities into blackout. Instead, Ukraine intercepted nearly all of them, and Gepards were responsible for dozens of the low-altitude kills that prevented chain reactions inside the energy network. Every Shahed stopped by 35mm fire was one less explosion at a substation, one less emergency shutdown, one less winter catastrophe. Because no matter how advanced your Patriots and Iris-Ts are, they fall apart without the layer underneath. Air defense is not one system, it's a hierarchy, a lattice, a living organism where each layer depends on the one below it. At the very top sit the prestige systems, Patriot, Iris-T, NASAMS, SAMP-T. These are the crown jewels intercepting cruise missiles, ballistic threats, and high-speed aircraft. They're the headlines. But here's the truth. Analysts rarely admit out loud. Those top-tier systems collapse instantly if the low layer fails. Patriots cannot waste million-dollar interceptors on $20,000 drones. Iris-T cannot stay on alert 24/7 firing at slow-moving objects with tiny radar signatures. High-end systems are finite. A few launchers, a few reloads, and long maintenance cycles. When they're forced to fight drone swarms themselves, they burn out, they run dry, and they lose the ability to stop the threats that genuinely matter. This is where the Gepard becomes irreplaceable. It eats the low-altitude chaos, so the high-altitude defenders can breathe. Every drone the Gepard destroys is a missile the Patriot doesn't have to fire, a reload Iris-T doesn't have to burn, a detection channel NASAMS doesn't have to waste tracking. And because Gepards operate close to the front line and close to cities, they plug the exact gaps Russia tries to exploit. The blind spots between radar arcs, the terrain dips where Shaheds skim the treetops, the low corridors where cruise missiles hug the ground. By relentlessly clearing the bottom of the air defense pyramid, Gepards force Russian aircraft higher, strip them of attack angles, and break up coordinated strike packages. A Russian jet that has to fly higher is a Russian jet that becomes vulnerable to medium and long-range missiles, which is why Russian aviation rarely dares to approach Gepard-protected sectors. This layered synergy is the reason Ukraine achieved the single most important statistic of the war: a 74% overall interception rate despite facing one of the largest air barrages in modern history. That number isn't just a percentage, it's the difference between cities standing or burning, and yet, even with its success, the Gepard faces one enemy it cannot shoot down: the political paralysis surrounding its ammunition. The Gepard's power doesn't come from its cannons alone. It comes from the 35mm rounds that tear drones apart. And almost immediately, Ukraine ran into the problem nobody wanted to admit publicly. The world simply didn't make enough. The original supplier of Gepard ammunition was Switzerland. Precision engineering, decades of expertise, perfect in peacetime, disastrous in wartime. Because Switzerland is bound by strict neutrality laws, it blocked all re-export requests, refusing to allow its 35mm ammunition to be sent to Ukraine. The Gepard, Ukraine's most cost-effective air defense weapon, was now starved by a country that wasn't even involved in the war. This forced Germany into an arms race with time itself. Rheinmetall had to restart a production line that had been dead for decades, a line built for a system Germany itself had retired. Engineers dug up old blueprints, retooled factories, tested prototypes, and built new manufacturing chains from scratch. What should have been a years-long bureaucratic project had to be turned into a wartime sprint, and the scale of Ukraine's appetite is enormous. A single Gepard battery can burn 4,000 to 6,000 rounds in a heavy month. During intense strikes, operators fire hundreds of rounds a night. Multiply that across dozens of units and the math becomes brutal. Ukraine needs tens of thousands of rounds every month just to keep pace with Russia's drone output. That's why Germany pushed Rheinmetall into overdrive, sinking money, manpower, and political capital into resurrecting 35mm production. By 2025, the effort had transformed into a national priority. New contracts guaranteed hundreds of thousands of rounds for 2025 to 2026, with fresh production lines in Germany dedicated solely to keeping Gepards fed. It's not elegant, it's not pretty. It's an arms race built on steel casings and tungsten cores, but it's the only way Ukraine can maintain the night-to-night fight for its skies. And as production scaled up, something unexpected happened. Germany realized this old platform wasn't just surviving the war, it was evolving. Weapons matter, but crews win wars. You can ship a machine across a border, you can deliver ammunition, you can repair metal, but the one factor Russia can't calculate, can't counter, and can't mass produce is the human being sitting behind the controls. When the Gepard first arrived, Ukrainian crews were learning a system older than their parents. Manuals were outdated, parts mislabeled, radar screens unfamiliar. Yet within weeks, the crews didn't just adapt. They evolved the doctrine. They built new drills, new firing routines, new detection habits customized for drones instead of aircraft. What Germany called obsolete, Ukraine turned into a modern craft, and that's where the kill ratios skyrocketed. A well-trained crew doesn't just shoot accurately, it shoots economically. New recruits might burn 60 to 80 rounds on a single drone. Veterans drop Shaheds with 7 to 15. That difference looks small on paper, But in a war where ammunition defines survival, crew skill separates a defended city from a burning one. Operators describe the rhythm of it, scanning the radar, listening for the telltale buzz of a Shahed's engine, switching to optical mode, judging the drone's wobble in the wind, waiting for the perfect second, then unleashing 2 streams of 35mm fire that walk straight into the target. Precision made by instinct. And morale? The Gepard changes the battlefield the moment it opens fire. Civilians say the same thing across cities like Kiev, Kharkiv, Odessa. If we hear the Gepard, we know we're safe. The cannons are thunder, violent, unmistakable, controlled. It's the sound of a city refusing to go dark. Every burst becomes reassurance, a message that the defenders are awake, watching, protecting. The crews feel that responsibility every night. They know their machine isn't glamorous, isn't new, and isn't sleek, but they also know it works. And when a town keeps its lights on because they hit every target in the sky, that becomes a form of morale no missile battery can match. The Gepard's real advantage isn't the radar, the guns, or the chassis. It's the people inside. The ones who turned a retired relic into Ukraine's most trusted guardian. And that brings the story to its final question. What happens now that Germany realizes the Gepard isn't history, but the blueprint for Europe's next air defense revolution? So the question becomes, what comes next? Combat proved the concept. Politics and industry must now turn that concept into permanence. KNDS Deutschland's September 2025 proposal is the first answer. A modernization package that swaps old electronics for modern, software-driven radars and fire control suites. Tightens sensor fusion with Ukraine's wider C2 networks and adds automation to reduce crew workload. It's a surgical upgrade philosophy. Keep the chassis and the twin 35mm lethality. Strip out obsolescent components and give the system the digital eyes and brains it lacked for modern electronic warfare. But modernization is only half the story. The real strategic prize is production, not just fixing a handful of relics, but building a sustainable industrial base. Talks in London at DSEI 2025 floated a joint venture. Ukrainian plants handling final assembly and maintenance, German firms supplying critical subsystems, and a feedback loop from frontline crews to engineers for continual iteration. The obstacles are brutal. Tooling vanished decades ago, suppliers dispersed, qualification regimes strict, but the payoff is huge. Local production would reduce transit times, shelter supply chains from bombardment, and seed an indigenous defense industry that can evolve faster than foreign procurement cycles. At the same time, industry is already selling the next generation. Rheinmetall's and other firms' Skynex-like concepts package twin 35mm guns with modern radars, programmable ahead airburst rounds, and AI-assisted target classification. Skynex demonstrated in mid-2025 the ability to destroy multiple UAVs at a marginal per-engagement cost far below missile interceptors, albeit at a price tag closer to 10 to 15 million euros per system. It's a different calculus, far more capable, far costlier. Programmable airburst ammunition is the multiplier. Fragments timed precisely to the drone's flight path, dramatically increasing single-shot lethality and reducing rounds per kill. Combine that with smarter sensors and you get a low-layer turret that's near impossible for mass-produced, loitering munitions to exploit. Yet the practical reality looms. Europe must decide whether to rebuild an old capability at scale or leap to expensive new systems that may be unaffordable in the quantities needed. The interim answer will likely be hybrid, upgraded Gepards and locally produced clones filling the trenches while Skynex-class turrets are fielded where budgets and priority permit. And in the end, history will judge it simply. The Gepard became the case study no strategist wanted to believe. Proof that cost-effective, brutally simple air defense can outperform the most modern, most expensive systems when the battlefield demands endurance, not elegance. While high-tech missiles ran out, the old 35mm barrels kept firing. While new systems struggled against swarm saturation, the Gepard chewed through wave after wave with mechanical certainty. And that is why, despite its retirement, despite its rust, despite every prediction of irrelevance, the Gepard became Ukraine's most indispensable air defense platform. The machine that protected cities, power plants, and millions of lives when nothing else was fast enough, cheap enough, or available enough. So the real question is this: when the next drone war begins, will Europe remember what actually saved the sky? If you found this analysis valuable, please consider subscribing to our channel for more deep dives into geopolitics. We would love to hear your thoughts. Drop your comments below and let us know what you think. Thank you for watching. and see you in the next video.